From A to Z, a creator economy podcast. Today, we're going to be getting into kind of a slightly different subject. We're going to talk about how Web 2 and Web 3, or the traditional internet and this new crypto enabled internet, and the new apps versus dApps, and kind of the business models around these things, and how the big paradox we're calling it here is that we're going to need Web 2 and traditional internet rails and payment structures in order to truly grow this new paradigm. Like, we're very dependent on Twitter, YouTube, what else?
Any of the traditional streaming, TikTok, Instagram, any of the things that people are used to looking, any of the apps that people have on their phone with the infinity scroll. Those are the platforms that ultimately we need to start on if we're going to be bringing people into the Web3 space.
Right. And even we're still using email lists. That's a big thing in Web3 still. We haven't escaped the email list. It's still the most powerful way you have to keep your audience is the newsletter.
The newsletter, yep, that subscription, that repeating, predictable information feed.
Right. And so in a lot of ways, we're very dependent on the very infrastructure we speak out against a lot. And, because, something I guess we haven't really gotten into in this show, personally, what I don't like about being a creator economy podcast is that I feel like the creator economy wasn't born out of people choosing this life. It was born out of corporations choosing this life for artists and creators, and saying that, essentially illustrators and writers and different levels of creative person who used to be part of the payroll, who used to be W-2 employees, got fired and forced into the 1099 race to the bottom. And in a lot of ways, the creator economy is the same as the gig economy, where it's a Moloch game,
To a certain extent, yeah. And maybe just as as that phase out, as the transition happens, maybe there's more Moloch than at later points. But for sure, right now, it's a sacrifice.
One thing you could look at, you see it slower maybe in other industries, but one thing you can really look at it, for instance, is the music industry, because as we've seen streaming become more accessible, instead of money becoming more accessible to more people, it's just flooded the market to the point that music is free now. And you can pay $10 to Spotify and you deserve everything in the world. And the reason it's a race to the bottom is because of all of the musicians who are willing to work for free. And even with illustrations, there's so many people, photographers and illustrators and other kinds of visual artists on Instagram, who are just doing it for the gram. And the more people who are willing to just do it for attention and whatever they get out of social media, the more it actually devalues artists that need to get paid for their work and want to survive on their work. And it really puts everybody in this position where art should just be free and artists shouldn't make money. And so that's where I don't like I don't like the creator economy being born out of that. And I see crypto as a way of taking every type of creator into make them more independent, because we're not getting paid by the traditional social media platforms. They're doing everything they can to keep us out.
Right. That transition, I think, from, hey, you go be independent yourself, we'll pay you for just what you create, that 1099 structure, I think, is going to drive people toward, well, okay, if I'm just in charge of myself and I'm doing my own individual thing, now everything I do is leveraging, is amplifying me, my brand,
Right.
It's pushing them initially into, corporation doesn't want to deal with all the bonus stuff, turning into motivation on the creator's side, saying, I want all that, so I need to ensure that I'm creating enough or making interesting things or reaching enough people. But all of the gains then go to the creator.
So then the real, yeah, you're right. I guess the real thing that, like, where it becomes not a paradox, and I guess what we're trying to solve for here is using the traditional social media and web structures for amplification,
Right.
and having somewhere else that you're leading people for financialization, in a sense. Like, you need to be able to keep the lights on. So as a musician, for instance, like, I'm using Spotify for the first time. Like, I've always been anti Spotify and I still am. But I guess I've come to this realization in crypto. It was very hard realization to just feel like, I have to use these things to get the amplification, at least on some of my music. And then that hopefully leads to more NFT sales, more t-shirt sales, whatever it is that you have as your product. And, but that thing is, it really comes down to no one's going to buy the music, so to speak. Like, except if it's an NFT. And then even then, they're not really buying the music. They're buying a speculative token, in a sense. They're buying your future upside. They think you're going to be something. And that's really awesome. I think it's really great. And that is where we can turn this creator economy into a true, like, artist community. Because these tokens, okay, so like, when you think about SoundCloud or Spotify or Instagram and all these walled gardens of social media where it's so hard to get people to follow you on every platform, or to, which platform does matter? Like, every creator has to think about, like, their funnel, in the sense of, like, what is your main content and what is your peripheral content? Because your peripheral content should be funneling people to your main content.
Right.
And your main content should be all
monetized.
Of it, in a sense, but your main content should be either monetized or the doormat to the monetization, whether it be a premium subscription or selling NFTs or merch or whatever it might be. But you need to have your main channel, and then everything else needs to be pointing there. Because if all your channels are just pointing each other and nobody's actually pointing to money, that's kind of like, yeah.
Yeah, you're not going to catch anybody in that. You're not going to, like, retain anybody. It's just a web. It's just a net,
Right. So
this paradox, almost, the Web 2 space is where you prove your value. That's where you show your value. That's where you reach as many people as you can. In that case, though, the Twitters and the Instagrams are the ones that are profiting. They're the ones reaping the value of what you've posted. The Web 3 piece, where you get people's attention with Web 2, point them to Web 3, that's where the creator can capture their value.
Not just that, what I was getting at, so you have all these walled gardens in Web 2 of not being able to get your audience cohesive. The email list is still the best place, like we were saying. Mm-hmm. But with NFTs and these tokens, now you're bringing it to a place where, okay, like, I can see everybody that's collecting my music. I can see the other music that my fans are collecting, and my audience and my friends. And you can see, what do we all have in common? You become this bigger community that goes outside of just my community and my music, because now I can see which of some other artist and some other musician. And then that becomes, like, so valuable for information of, like, maybe I should collaborate with this person. People like both of us, and the thing is, you can say all of these things exist in the current models of Instagram and YouTube and TikTok and all these things. This is already what you should be doing as a creator. The difference in, crypto on-chain culture as opposed to the traditional internet is that it doesn't matter how big you are, because the smallest musician, the smallest video content creator, whatever you want to call it, can make something from their work. Whereas in the traditional system, only the biggest people get anything at all.
Right.
And part of that is, to be honest, to do with payment structures, because every app has to use the traditional banking rails or the internet banking rails, whatever it is that they have to use has these huge fees on it. So of course they don't want to pay you until you've reached a certain amount. You've got to hit so many views, and then, but the reality is, like, most people on the internet will never see a dollar of the value that they've given the companies that they're creating for.
Right.
And crypto enables that by having cheaper fees for the platforms as well as the creators. And by making this web of being able to actually, like, there's nobody controlling my audience. When you're on YouTube or SoundCloud or anybody else, X or previously Twitter, like, I saw a hot take that what Elon did here by changing it to X is he really showed us that this doesn't belong to us. It's not ours, and it never was. We're in Elon's playground now. And
That's
whatever he wants it to be, it is. If
you're upset about this or upset about that, or you don't like the content policing policies, or you don't like the logo.
Oh, you don't like what I did with Twitter? Well, guess what? It's not.
Yep. Right. Now it's X. Do you like X?
Right. Same thing with Facebook just suddenly being Meta, like, oh, we're Meta, and that's our umbrella for Facebook and Instagram and WhatsApp and all our different tools, and we're going to make new stuff, and Oculus, like, all of it, like, right. So we're playing in someone else's backyard, and I'm not going to be totally like doe-eyed optimistic and saying that that's not happening in crypto. There's still a lot of that happening where we're still playing in someone else's backyard. And even if it is open, permissionless, trustless, we still have a lot of governance, which is like anything that has people governance is open to politics, which means that you actually don't have something permissionless and trustless because what you agreed to when you bought it may not be what it is 6 months from then or a month from then. And, now the
unless you take into account that when you're buying it, there may be governance changes. If you have that in your mind when you opt into an ecosystem or get a piece of art or a token, it's a little bit different. Like, you just have to know that if that's the fluid state of things, then expect that fluid.
Yeah, but I guess what it comes down to is knowing what what do you want from this thing? Because if that thing gets changed, then it's no longer valuable to you.
It's not the tool you want.
That is where this is good because, where Web 3 is better than Web 2. And like, it's where crypto is better is because you can always exit. And unfortunately, and I guess you can do that with these other things too, but the difference being that you can't bring your audience with you. And it's really hard to, like, if you leave Instagram, it's really hard to retain a lot of those people. You leave Instagram, right. They're gone. You erase your account, they're gone. You may never find them again if you didn't already get them to follow you on some other app.
Yeah.
And, I feel like you don't necessarily lose that. So like, for instance, if I mint music NFTs on one platform and then I just don't like that platform, or I want to use another platform, I can do that. And it doesn't really segregate my audience that much because
they're all looking at the same chain. They're all looking at the same.
When I go to OpenSea, I'm going to see them regardless of what I minted on. I'm going to see who, or when I go on any, NFT wallet, I'm going to see these are my supporters. It doesn't matter what chain, doesn't matter what app, it doesn't matter how they got to me. I see they're there. I see them. And
you know who they are, and you can engage with them. You can thank them. You can be appreciative. You can, hey, I noticed you really liked this track, and maybe you were the only one that really liked it. Now you can start engaging with them on a customized level if that's what you want. It gives that artist so much more control over not just what they're creating, but how they're communicating with their fans.
Right. And communication, that's the big difference here. So why am I able to do this? Not just because it's a non-fungible token, not just because it's open and transparent, but because I'm typically not getting my best returns from the platform. Meaning people don't come to mint my music NFT on Riff app because they saw me on Riff app. They saw me either on some other Lens application that pointed them back to Riff app, or they saw me on X or they saw me on Threads, or they saw me on Instagram, and they clicked the link that brought them back to Riff app to mint my NFT, or they saw Zombie Time on YouTube, or so they saw me somewhere else saying, come mint my NFT. And so now I'm capturing my audience from different places and bringing them to the one place of, financialization and tokenization, being able to, that's getting better than the email list when you start to have these like on-chain footprints of who are my biggest supporters over time. That tells you so much more than an email.
Right.
And so to me, like, it's the fact that I am going to use all of these platforms to get the message out and bring them back to the one spot. And it's not the platform itself. So I'm not as worried about necessarily leaving the platform, because the platform itself might not be getting my audience. I don't know. It's kind of cool with Riff, for instance. Like with Riff, because it's part of the Lens ecosystem, I can pretty much say, I don't really know the difference between a Riff app listener or a Lens listener. They can be listening from Orb or Butterfly or Favor or Lenstube or wherever they, Ooh La La. They could be listening from anywhere. Even though it's pointed back to Riff, and even if they mint from Ooh La La, they're still minting from the Riff contract.
And other people can see that too, not just the creator. Other people know, hey, Zombie Shepherd's picking up in popularity. I can see that collectively from all these different sources. 20 people have minted this thing. Everyone can see all that activity in one spot, as well as the creator, getting them all driven to one spot.
And then beyond that, I'm getting, there's a lot of people not on Lens, but if they might be on Polygon, and I'm not sure how Riff app works, but a lot of these Lens apps, you don't need a Lens profile to be able to mint the NFTs.
Forgot about that.
Not all of them, but some of them, you're able to still interact with the contracts, even though you don't have a Lens profile.
Right.
And I mean, honestly, that's really the world we want anyway. And I know that V2 of Lens is going to be, you're going to be able to mint from any NFT platform on Lens. So if you're on Orb or Lenster and you're scrolling and you see, a sound.xyz NFT that's on Optimism, you're going to be able to mint it right then and there. You're not going to have to go away and switch your wallet and do the whole thing. Like, it's going to be, you might have to switch your wallet at this point, but you're going to be able to click that button right there and it's going to work. And so that's really like, we need that abstraction. We need to not know all of this stuff as the end user, in a sense. And I mean, I bought some sound.xyz NFTs with a credit card, and I loved it.
That's easy. You don't even need a crypto wallet. You don't need any, well, maybe to store
you need a wallet.
But not to pay for it. Just to be able to go straight from your credit card anytime, anywhere, that's hugely advantageous.
Yeah.
And that's, maybe that falls into our paradox. Maybe that's using Web 2 technologies to, get that success in the Web 3.
Well, and also that's something I think about with DeFi, for instance. Like, I'm a person who, I don't use money. I use credit. Like, I never use money. I use money to pay my credit cards. I use credit every day. So like, that is something that keeps me from using crypto every day, will give me crypto credit. And what I have, and I don't mean like what we have with crypto credit cards, because I have a Gemini card and a Coinbase card. Mm-hmm. And like, I use my Gemini card rather often because the Coinbase card is a debit card. So I'm actually spending money. I don't use debit, I use credit. So I use the Gemini card more often because I get ETH back. And then that ETH I can put on chain and use it,
borrow against it later to get whatever you need. Yeah.
Right. Huh. So when crypto starts to get credit, when we get under collateralized lending, that's going to be super powerful, because then I would totally get a on-chain credit card and settle, at the end of the month kind of thing, or however.
And any protocol issuing that credit to you would be able to look at your on-chain activity and go, oh yeah, dude pays his loans back, for all intents and purposes, on-chain he has a high credit score. Yes.
Yeah. So, we kind of got off the rails with that one, but it's important.
Only a little bit.
Yeah. The point being that like, it's still great knowing that like, if I want to get someone from Instagram who's never used crypto in their life they can open a wallet. Yes, you're still gonna have to figure out how to set up an Ambire or a MetaMask or whatever, or Phantom wallet, whatever it is you want to use. You're still gonna have to figure it out. You're still gonna have to store your seed phrase. You're still gonna have to like, well, in the case of Ambire, you can trust them, quote unquote, it's trusted, but you can trust them if you get like, if you lose your seed phrase or something, they have a level of security to be able to retain it with your email address type of thing. I don't know how that works. I haven't had to use it, but it is what it is. So if you were to get an Ambire wallet and then go on sound.xyz and use a credit card to buy music NFTs, like you didn't have to learn anything about crypto. And that's like, right. And so like, if you don't want to invest, you don't care about stable coins, you don't want to buy ETH, but you do want to buy these NFTs, well, you can do that. Then from there, it's up to you to decide, well, yeah, I bought these music NFTs. Now I want to sell them. Well, now you got to learn how to use OpenSea or Blur or whatever to try to set up a listing. You got to do an OTC. And now that means you have to learn how to use these things.
And you're trusting another party.
Yeah.
With an OTC. Yeah, with
an OTC for sure. But the point is like that simple being able to get somebody in with a credit card is super powerful. And I think that, that is one of the things holding us back right now. Like I would do so much more in crypto if I could do it on a credit card, just because I do everything in credit and I settle at the end of the month kind of thing. And for me, it would be easier to go paycheck to credit card than it is to go paycheck to exchange to on-chain to NFT. Like it's so much more work. Right. And in a lot of ways, I like the idea of being able to turn credit into on-chain assets directly instead of having to go through all the loops to like do that, because then it means that if I was to sell any NFT, if I buy an NFT with a credit card and then I sell it for crypto, I just like got crypto on chain, avoiding a bunch of steps. You don't
need to deal with the on-ramp. You don't need to deal with the off-ramp. You don't need to go through a centralized exchange for any of that.
I don't need to worry about my entry price. I mean, you do, I guess, for your tax purposes of selling.
Record your cost basis. Right. Yeah.
But like, you won't have to worry about like, if the price goes down, it really doesn't matter because you're up on your ETH purchase. You know what I mean? Because the other part being that if you buy a music NFT and you sell it a year later, if we're in a bull market at that time, your purchase is up no matter what. Like even when ETH goes back down, your purchase should have been in the profit. And then the other thing is you're also going to be able to list and sell things. You can already list and sell things in USDC and other currencies. So you could actually lock in the dollar amount right then and there. You don't have to sell it in ETH. You bought it in ETH, but you could say I'm selling it for X USDC. And now you've locked in your dollar amount. And then you could send that USDC to your Coinbase card and use it at the grocery store.
and all this said, this couldn't be a creator or an artist reaching one interested individual, capturing value from one interested individual who wants to support that artist by purchasing the NFT. You don't have to scale. You don't have to get your 1 million views on YouTube before you start getting anything from your content. So
yeah, it's,
value in Web3.
Web 2 says you need everybody to care about you to matter. Mm-hmm. That's because you're getting paid by the platform.
Right.
There was a niche in there with things like Patreon and email lists and direct buyers, and where you say, all right, well, I don't actually need the whole world. I only need 1,000 really valuable fans that support me.
1,000 people willing to pay $2 a month.
Right.
Now you've covered your expenses or whatever.
Crypto brings us to 100. You really only need 100 true fans at this point. If you can get 100 people to support your efforts and to believe in your things, then like, you know, I guess the difference here is that with the 100, it's going to do the artist more than it's going to do for that community. However, it does kind of light a fire in a sense under that community to like scale. You want to bring more people into it because I guess if you want to be able to sell your assets, you want to be able to be the super fan. Well,
Right.
that means you need more fans to come in later. And it's so funny if you think about it, how like in a sense, then like music is a Ponzi scheme because like getting in on the first album is so much better than getting in on the third album. You know what I mean?
Depends on the artist. Depends on the artist.
I've been listening to them, like, you know, like music people, and maybe this is just in like certain circles, but music people are so jaded that by the time a band gets to that like stadium
Once
level,
it's
people are like,
mainstream,
I don't
you
listen to them
dismiss it.
anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was listening to them when they only had 2 albums, and like, oh, you're doing that, you know, they fill stadiums now. I don't listen to that anymore.
I can relate to that. I'll even jump in with an example. The Weeknd. In this case, like The Weeknd has blown up. Everybody knows.
I used to love The Weeknd. First 3 albums, even after
when I
that,
got
I
in.
still like his music, but it's just too
Very different. And the switch, seeing it all kind of develop, was very weird.
Well, there's also something here. So, and I want to actually bring this up for other reasons besides music. So, like, there's something here. There's the high school model that we use in music, and I think it applies to a lot of things. So, the high school model is freshman, sophomore, junior, senior. So, your first 4 albums are the high school model in a sense. And if you're an artist that makes it, typically you know what your sound is by the 3rd and the 4th album. You've developed your sound. You've produced your pinnacle album that everyone's going to imagine you for forever. Your pinnacle is somewhere in that first 4. And everything after that is a caricature of yourself.
Yes. Yes. And I think this great point to make, because even in this The Weeknd example, he has definitely, Abel Tesfaye has leaned into this caricature thing, knowing that like, yeah, he did all his experimental stuff in House of Balloons and what was it, Thursday and he did all his experimental stuff. And now he's like the guy in the red suit for this album. And that's his caricature for the entire album, and it's like amplification, it's marketing over the course of that year or whatever, 2 years. And then after that, he switches to a new era, a new caricature. Now he's on the, you know, we had Starboy.
But what I mean by caricature too is not just the character, but literally his voice hasn't changed since Thursday. Like he found that sound and there it is. He's going to do that every fucking time because it's so.
I'm a big fan, so I want him to keep doing it.
But it even like Tool is a good example. Tool did Enema, and then is the name of the album Lateralus? Am I tripping? I'm tripping right now. I
remember the song though. I don't know if that's the name of the album.
You're right. It's probably not. It's anyway. So those 2 albums, the 3rd and the 4th album, are like, I mean, the 3rd album is the pinnacle, and then the 4th album is basically like, oh, can we do that again? And then after that, they've just been, you know, being Tool. They're one who they've still found their sound, but I think that they're not one that recreates that sound every album. They're trying to break that mold, but they still sound like Tool. And in a lot of cases, I think
that's good though.
Yeah, yeah.
Branding, recognizability, you have something consistent to be, you know, expecting.
But it's just a trap you fall into because as an artist, because what you're going to keep doing what sells, because not doing that, like, I mean, any good business, why would you not do what sells? If you're a restaurant and you are experimenting with dishes and then all of a sudden your place gets filled up when you start serving this thing, well, don't stop serving that thing.
Lean into that thing, right? Yeah, exactly. People want it, give them more
of that. Like whatever it is that people are tapping into, do more of that. So it's natural that it's going to go that way. But in a sense, it does kill kind of like innovation. It kills experimentation. You're afraid to do anything new as an artist because then what if they reject me? Of course, they're going to reject me because as soon as you don't do the same thing, people are going to be like, why are you doing something different? Why are you being different?
That applies to every scale. You know, you're going to get, people aren't going to like you for something. You just have to be okay with that. Keep doing your thing.
Another thing I've been thinking about that more relates to us as creators, is that, you know, for me at least, I know I'm not speaking for you. I am speaking for you as a creator. So we've only been doing this, like crypto podcasting, for a very short time. We're in essentially our sophomore year. Like you're a little behind me because you started a year after me, basically. So
but we're still early.
We're in our high school era where it's like I'm in my junior year, you're a sophomore, in our creators era as doing crypto podcasting and technology podcasting and creator economy podcasting. And so like in a lot of ways, we're finding our voice and we're finding out what works. And we're growing up in this industry. And in a lot of ways, like we're going to be seniors going into the next bull market. You know what I mean? We're going to have found our voice and we're going to know who we are and what we're doing. And, I think we've been in a solid direction. I don't think we've changed up a lot, but we haven't pivoted.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we pivot only in the sense that, we kind of change what the content of the show is. We wanted to mix things up and all that. But I do definitely feel this constant, steady upward improvement. I feel more comfortable creating a show, drafting notes, getting in front of the camera, handling the editing on the back end. Every time we do it, we get better and faster and look for more improvements.
And that's the thing. We have already made more money in cryptocurrency podcasting than we ever could have just doing YouTube or anything else because we sold a bunch of season 2 tokens from A to Z, and we've had some t-shirt sales. And, so like we've already have a small treasury that we've started to build upon as from A to Z. And that's something that wouldn't have happened if we were only doing this on YouTube, or we were only doing this on Twitter, or we were only doing a newsletter and hoping that people subscribe to our premium or whatever. Like we just went straight to, here's our token. And support us.
And our small fan base supported us because they liked what we were doing. And for those of you watching, thank you so much. We definitely appreciate your support. But like this is the example. This is the example that we're trying to set is anyone can get started at any skill level or at any scale level. You can start with no audience. You can start with a small audience. But
I think we've only moved 10 tokens.
Right? But the paradox, I guess, in this case is that if you really want to kill it, if you really want to succeed in Web3, you almost have to already be succeeding in Web2. Be succeeding in Web 2 and point your fans to the Web 3 spot where you can capture more of the value. It's not necessarily required, but if you really want to stand out in the space, in the Web 3 space, you kind of have to establish in Web 2.
Right.
So that's a little bit of the weirdness in transitioning from the Web 2 to the Web 3 space, but
you have to have a big enough foot in that pool to be able to bring people in wherever that audience is. And it's also knowing, like, for instance, crypto is not popular on Instagram. It is more popular on Twitter. So you're going to get more people converting from Twitter into your NFTs than you are anywhere else. Does that mean don't put in the effort? Not necessarily. I think also YouTube is another big one. Yep. YouTube's a big converter. Not as easy to tap into your audience, but
it's a great opportunity, and with Lenstube, it's a great opportunity for that parallel as well. People they're familiar with that YouTube setup. They like videos. They know where to go for stuff.
And for us,
into Lens is an easy next step.
Lens is our premium subscription in a sense because we release everything early on Lens. So if you really want to get the information before anybody else, you're following us on Lens. And then you can also collect those episodes, which supports us and Bankless DAO, as well as Lenstube, the platform itself. We put a little kickback in there.
We voluntarily chose to also support Lenstube because, well, they're providing a valuable service to us and we appreciate it. 2% off of our collect is, not crazy for either of us. It's not crazy of a loss for us, and it's not a crazy gain for Lenstube, but it's the symbolism. It's that gesture that, hey, we see that you're providing some value for us, and thank you for not just taking it from us. Here's a little bit. It's just kind of a...
Yeah. And then 18% to Bankless DAO. And then there's also the 10% referral fee. So anybody who
if you want to just help us go viral, you can capture a part of that, and there's
something for everybody there. Yeah.
That's that Web3 bonus.
that's really what this episode was about. Is you're going to need these traditional platforms. We still need a lot of these things while we're working on, and it's not to say that we'll ever not need some of these things, because, like with what Coinbase has done, like Coinbase is vital infrastructure. It's, like, and doing the base layer 2 is now going the other direction where, hey, not just do we need Coinbase to get back to my bank, but like people who just get into crypto will now be able to get on chain with us, and they don't just have to live in Coinbase. Yep. They'll be able to figure it out and move to something, instead of jumping from Coinbase into something they don't understand, like Optimism or Arbitrum, or worse, going to layer 1 and just burning it all on fees, not understanding what they're doing.
Yeah.
Now they're going to be able to go into base, where there's definitely going to be some onboarding flow. There's definitely going to be some base education and things like that. Like, they're not going to take their Coinbase customers and throw them out in the water. This is, in a sense, like, it's not the kiddie pool, because it's very real. There's no guardrails, but they're not just going to like let them out there, on their own, so to speak.
It's kind of a happy medium between centralized Coinbase exchange and Coinbase wallet. You're on your own, we just put our name on it approach. That base is that kind of happy medium. Yeah, you can use our Coinbase wallet. You can start on Coinbase Central. We'll help you get using Base onto the chain.
Right.
And I think that's moves in the right direction. This is the UI and the UX improvements that we're going to be needing to be onboarding that next billion people into the space. So you love to see it.
So yeah, it's just like the regulation and ethics episode we were talking about. We're going to need these traditional systems just as badly as we're going to disrupt them.
Right. And crazy times.
The ones that lean into it are the ones that are going to do the best. And I think Coinbase knows that. Coinbase is like, hey, we built on the other side of the crypto road, but we know that we want to be on the crypto road. Yep. We're building the bridge. We're building that, so in a lot of ways, like, we're doing that with these social media platforms. We're using traditional social media to say, hey, come follow us on Lens, come follow us on Farcaster, come follow us, come buy our NFTs, come like tap into the real from A to Z, not just like the clips that maybe YouTube will allow you to see, or, you know what I mean? Like, be intentional in your social media, not just a victim of the algorithms.
Yes.
So we're about wrapped here. We pretty much touched on all our points. You got any closing stuff?
Keep trying, keep building. If you need help getting on Web3, reach out. We'll get you there.
Yeah, go get From A to Z Season 2 token on Lens. Go pick up some Zombie Shepherd music NFTs on Riff app, or also on Lens. I got Seasoning and Blood and Honey. And then you can also support us on YouTube and Spotify and all of the places that you can expect. But
all those
not as From A to Z. You got to find us individually, because From A to Z only exists on chain.
Hey.
Technically. So, all right. Well, it's been fun, and we will see you again next week with actually the final episode of the Creator Economy series before we go into our next big series. So
we might have a little lull in between. We've got some prep work to do, but I'm excited to get into that next one for sure.
Hell yeah. All right. Well, we'll see you soon, friends.